So hello everyone, and I hope you're doing very well. In today's video I'm going to share with you the top 10 most atmospheric tames, so without further ado, let's get straight into it. In at number 10 I've decided to put the Baryonyx because I have a lot of memories with this tame, and it also does spawn in the swamp biome. And out of creatures like the Sarco, the Capro, and this creature, personally I find that it fits best to the biome, and it would sort of make sense if the Spino spawned there as well. I'm not sure how accurate that is to what actually has happened before, but still the Spinosaurus will be a good addition in the swamp biome. But obviously it isn't, but the Barry really is a great fit, and also just a great creature on top of that as well. It has a lot of mobility. If you couldn't figure that out already, there is no extra movement speed on this thing. That's its walking, and obviously this is its sprinting. There's not actually too much difference between the two there, and it can also jump as well, you know, if you want to get that kind of thing going, because a creature that can jump is honestly, in my opinion, just a lot more fun to have and use. They can also spin as well. That spin attack is incredibly useful for underwater caving and general underwater exploration. It can stun creatures up to the size of a Megalodon. It is honestly a godly ability that I think we should all be using in underwater travels if you have the Baryonyx and the creatures are under the size of a Megalodon. Otherwise you should probably just run, but their health, stamina, and damage are really great as well. They're the perfect size for general caving too. Perfect creatures. Continuing on, we have got the Argentavis, and this is probably like my favourite creature on the island by far. There is nothing which can really beat it when it comes to atmosphere on the island, and I'm pretty sure it's the highest ranking creature that spawns on the island that has this atmosphere. Actually, there's one more creature further on which is spawns on the island and has more atmosphere, but that's partly model related reasons, as the RG doesn't have the most interesting model, and you know, that's probably just because of what the creature is. It's not some kind of xenomorph alien thing. We've been attuned to obviously a lot more complex creatures with just what ARK has been doing lately, but the RG keeps it simple and does it well and sticks to it and has a nice atmosphere and a good atmosphere. Because of that, it fits very well in the mountainous biomes. It colours usually camouflage quite well to the terrain, which helps obviously them, not you, because sometimes if you're going around on the mountains you might not even see an RG and then you're like, oh my god, there's no RG chasing me. But that can be said about some other creatures. The more grey browny creatures tend to work best in the mountain environments. Also, they just pick off of any dead bodies that they'll find, and that is just a key thing with the mountains as well. There's a scarcity of food usually, so it plays into that part. Generally they're just great creatures though for holding around metal, crystal, and obsidian because they've got weight reduction on them. Their smithy also acts as a saddle, and they can pick up a wealth of creatures. Now you could be tempted to say the normal wyverns here because they've obviously got their trenches and that adds a lot of atmosphere to these creatures, but I would personally say that the crystal wyverns are still top of the list, as they feel very new and fresh and atmospheric, whatever that obviously means to you. With these creatures, obviously they do not have a trench, but they have a new approach to a taming method, and on top of that as well, generally I find them to be cooler in terms of their elemental abilities. You've got the tropical crystal wyvern, which will shoot out water. Then you've got the blood crystal wyvern, which you can probably tell what that shoots out. I can't quite recall what the ember crystal wyvern shoots out. I think it's probably fire, something like that, considering what an ember is. But personally, I think the designs, the colours, the way it fits into crystal isles, they are literally crystal wyverns, just outcompetes those wyvern trenches. And so although they fit very nicely onto Scorch, that is their home map, so that is what I'm comparing all of these creatures from, by the way. The original maps that they originate from, not later ones, as they weren't intended for that at release, but then they just got moved on. The crystal wyverns are only on Crystal Isles, and it literally has one of the same letters as the map. It fits the bill perfectly. You need Prime and Crystal to tame these things. They follow that crystal theme, especially the tropical crystal wyvern, which is the reason why I used it for the b-roll here, because it's the most kind of crystal wyvern looking, but yeah, so much easier to tame than a normal wyvern and so cool and useful. In at number 7, we've got the Maywing, and I have to put this creature here because come on, it is just so ultimate on Gen 2, and it's got an atmosphere like no other creature. It is the best traveling mount out there, and also no other Ark creature is really a platypus. Like, it is just the most platypus like creature in Ark, and we all really do know that creature if we haven't been living under a rock for 150,000 years or something like that. That's might even predate Homo sapiens, I'm not actually quite sure on that. Either way, you know what this creature is, even if you don't know it as a Maywing. If you never played Ark before, you can kind of tell what this creature is based off of, and it's just got a really nice and friendly atmosphere to them, and it just makes them enjoyable to use overall. Yeah, there's a bit of some, you know, weird stuff that comes with them, with the milk animation. It still kind of freaks me out. It's not like it's not a natural thing, it is, and obviously it makes it a feedable, a portable feeding trough, which allows you to feed your baby dinos, and it is extremely useful for that. They can also glide on top of water as well, and they're not the worst berry gatherers out there. They can just belly flop onto them and then berries. There you go. So we've got the Desmodus. This creature really does need to be here, as all of its abilities are linked so well to what creature this actually is, and also just personally it really fits in with a Nordic theme, especially the saddle colors. It's all been thought out very well, and also just the colors of the bat and the way it fits into the order honestly is absolutely fantastic, and Wildcard couldn't have done a better job with it. Obviously its abilities are, the main ones are that it can farm blood bags and it can make a sanguine elixir, which stems from blood anyway, and vampire bats, you know, they have a lot of blood and they need a lot of blood. They can also grab onto any kind of wall, vertical surface, ceiling, and they can glide too. They can pick players off mounts in PvP. They're just such a well characterized creature. They're kind of this vicious blood sucking thing, and you can go around and be that vicious blood sucking thing around the whole map and just decimate things. They've got kind of a monster characteristic, a monster atmosphere to them, even though they are a little bit more light-hearted than that. So in at number 5, we have got the Raasclark. This is the top appearing creature that spawns on the island on the list, and personally I think it really does have to make it. It is a cool flying insect that can shoot all kinds of things out of its body, and it has a lot of new atmosphere, and it brings a sort of new dimension to the map, if you will. These creatures are fast, they're agile, they are vicious, and they make this swamp biome, an already horrible place, an even more horrible one. It honestly could not be worse for the swamp biome situation, but I'm not saying that that's necessarily a bad thing. It's just progressively the swamp biome has gotten harder, harder, and harder, and harder, and now you've got these things and it's gone up a little bit more. The only good thing about it is they're slightly rarer than the other creatures. They're not going to find them as commonly as a local capro, so you should be alright with these things not spawning on you absolutely everywhere, but it depends what your dino counts are on your servers, obviously. These creatures have the exact same tame method as the Reaper, so there's nothing too interesting there, and the Reaper is later on the list, so I'll tell you about the taming method then, and if you want you can still watch the B-roll here and you can see what you kind of need to tame this thing, as this actually does come from my Raasclark taming guide, which I think personally, if you don't know how to tame one yet, you go watch that. I will link it up on screen right now. Also, just before we move on to the next creature, I'll let this play along if you just want to know how to tame this thing without me directly telling you, because I'm sure you can work it out. We do have a membership program on the channel, and I did a poll recently, and a few of you said that you would be interested in it. So if you go down into the description of this video, there is the link to sign up for the membership. I would really appreciate it if you did, and also I will take your suggestions for videos, as long as it's not like 100 days or things like that, because they will take far too long. I will take your suggestions for videos as people and like personal guides for yourself, and I'll upload them all as members only content, as I kind of want to make it more personalized to you and what content you want to see from me. And obviously I'll just upload members exclusive content anyway, and you get early access to videos as well. Continuing on, we have got the Velo. This creature, in my opinion, is more atmospheric than the Rhino Ganassa because it's not all big guns blazing new innovative thing. In a way, what it kind of is for me, because I find its ability to be very innovative, and the fact that no one's ever really carried this out further in the wildcard team since then is a bit like, well, it really should, as this could be further expanded on, and it would be just extremely nice to have as an ability that could be carried further on into some other creatures. But personally, I really like how this creature molds into the desert map. It seems very well habited to it. Also, on top of that, its spine abilities, and also just its general, like, the detail on the model and the way the textures that go around it and all the spines that you can see everywhere and the animations on how it shoots it. They honestly give this creature a lot of character as kind of a goofy but also quite, you know, violent creature. And it's also a little bit creepy as well, the way how like its head shakes and just its head shakes and the rest of its body stays still. There's just something to me that says that is a little bit creepy. Also, they're just quite small creatures as well, and they're not really difficult to use. They're just generally great for a lot of scenarios, and I love these creatures for whatever character that they offer you. In at number 3, we have got the Rock Drake, and the Rock Drake really is something when it comes to atmosphere, such as Arboration as well. Just the general map that the Rock Drake is placed on really gives this thing a lot of atmosphere as a creature. They are fast, very agile gliders, although maybe not flyers. You don't really need it for the home map that they're on. Obviously, I recorded this on Crystal Isles, and actually Rock Drakes were around on Crystal Isles before it got turned into an actual DLC where it was a mod map. Still, you could fly around with Rock Drakes on this thing, as Rock Drakes were on the map. Not sure why they removed them. I guess maybe they don't work too well on the map, but you know, it would have definitely been nice to still keep them in. There are a lot of cool things actually I find with Crystal Isles that were taken out for the actual DLC release. A few things like that which I wish were kind of kept in the game. Either way, these creatures are just really well fitting to the red zone. I think it's called, is it called the red zone? Something like that. Basically, you go down and you're going to spend ages going down because it does take a while, especially if you don't have a Rock Drake on you. Then you're going to find these Rock Drake nests, the same tame method as the Wyvern. Then you're just going to steal that egg, and then you have to escape, and you can't really fly out anywhere. It's not how it really works on Arboration because flyers are banned, so no flyers around. And then you're just going to get loads of air conditioning when you're in a safe space and hatch that Rock Drake, and you're going to love that Rock Drake so much. And then you're probably going to go and get a much higher level one because you're going to start with a low level one because it's just generally easier, or the eggs that you can just find first really with these things. But yeah, once tamed, you got yourself an absolute flying machine, a monster of dealing damage, and something that can climb up pretty much any wall surface you can think of. In at number 2, I am putting the Bloodstalker, just because I find it really suits its biome very well, and as a general character, as a creature, I like its model design. I like how it's characterized as this kind of creepy spider hanging around in the high trees of the misty, murky bog biome, and you never know when they're gonna jump out on you and just start sucking the life out of you. The character that has been built around this creature since obviously Gen 1 released on its home map is insane, and they kind of lose a bit of that on Gen 2, but I'm not comparing their Gen 2 appearance, I'm just comparing their Gen 1 appearance to their atmosphere, as that is the map that they released on. I did mention this earlier, of course. And once tamed, which is the same tame method as the Desmodus, although the Bloodstalker obviously did it first, you get blood bags in your inventory, and then from that they will suck them out of it, and then boom, that's how you tame them. But you need to go up to them, they're going to grab onto you. The Desmodus will do the same. Then once you have blood bags in your inventory, which you use the syringe for, otherwise you can use a Desmodus to farm those blood bags as well, then there you go. It will start sucking the blood bags out of you, and sometimes it will take quite a lot, so you're going to need to be doing a lot of syringing, or at least you definitely did back in the day when you were just on Gen 1, because that was the only way to get blood bags. Obviously, if you're still playing Gen 1, like just with all the Gen 1 creatures, you're still going to have to do that. and actually for 100% effectiveness, you're probably going to want to bring in Moss Chops as well and feed it to the Bloodstalker first, as it's just gonna make the taming experience better. But only do that if you've got a max level Bloodstalker, otherwise not really worth it. They're also my favourite underwater mounts out there. They have so much mobility in that space, great general attackers as well. The damage is not awful. I really do love these creatures. And finally, in at number 1, we have got the Reaper. I think that they fit the best into their map out of any creature, and although maybe not the most inventive thing from Wildcard, simply just being a xenomorph pretty much copy and pasted into art. The taming method is really cool and brings a lot of atmosphere to the tame. Essentially what you do is you get a Reaper Queen, then you lower its health to I think below 1000. It will have a purple glow, and then from that you'll be able to go up to it, it will impregnate you, then the baby will be inside you. Doesn't matter what character you selected, by the way, because I don't think it's going where you might have thought it was going. It's probably just going in the stomach, considering, you know, what happens in Alien. You generally know the gist. Then you get loads of XP before the baby comes out, and then that's how you get to up to 100% effectiveness. Then when it hatches, you get those Reaper pheromones out, so the baby doesn't kill you, but it'll probably still kill you anyway. Then obviously once you've claimed it, there you go, and it's just going to grow up, and you're going to nurture it, and then boom, like that, you've got yourself a Reaper King, and not the Reaper Queen, obviously. The only difference being their second attack, instead of dealing torpor, now simply just slows down creatures. If you haven't noticed, I am actually on a Reaper Queen for this, so if anyone's saying, oh well, that's not what the Reaper King does, yeah, I know, with that tail ability, this is a Reaper Queen, not a Reaper King, but you know, it still looks like a Reaper. The only difference is obviously that tail ability. But yeah, best creature for Atmosphere. The top 10 best underwater Arctames. In at number 10, we have got the Mosasaurus, and I'm putting this thing here because really in today's age, it isn't the height of underwater travel like it used to be. The Mosasaurus is in some need of some TLC. It does lack a lot of inventiveness in its abilities, but it still is going to be a good underwater tame, and it's deserving of the list. The Plesiosaur is just slightly outside the bracket, so that creature is not making the list today, but the Mosasaurus just manages to squeeze in. It's not my favorite underwater tame by any means, but you can definitely get around on it quite easily, and there's a lot of good mobility and motion that you can get out of this creature. Like, you're still going to use a Wyvern even though they've got a bad turning circle because they're great flyers. It's kind of similar with this thing, but it's not quite the same because they aren't really as good as something like a Wyvern. A Wyvern is a much better creature, but Wyverns can't go underwater, so that's besides the point really. So next up, we have got the Ichthyosaurus. I was going to consider putting the Tuso in this spot as well. I don't really use it much as an underwater creature, but I guess I'll give it a brief honourable mention here because it still is quite a nice underwater tame, but it didn't make it on the list quite for me. But still, you know, it has good mobility, and it is also quite a nice dealer of damage. The Ichthyosaurus, however, is just a speed demon when it comes to underwater travel. Yes, maybe not the fastest underwater creature we've got on our list today, but still one that can really get around, and most things won't be able to keep up with this thing whatsoever, which is why I like this as an underwater tame. Although it's not really going to be great for any kind of attacking or heavy damage dealing, that's really not what it's here for, especially considering it is a passive tame. It is one of the easiest creatures to tame on the list today, so it is definitely very deserving of this place, as considering how easy this thing is to tame, and also just generally how much travel and mobility you can get out of this creature, it is insane. And in my opinion, because of this, I'm putting them above the Mosasaur, because the Mosasaur really does need some TLC, like I mentioned before, whereas this is not really in any need of TLC. It's very good how it is, and it is so much easier to tame and so much more worthwhile. Coming up next, we have got the Megalodon, and this is one of those tames where I think they're actually quite underrated. Yes, it's not going to be the best underwater tame in existence. There are some creatures which I would definitely prefer over this, but I feel like considering how long it's been around for and actually what abilities it still holds, it is a very viable option. Maybe not for PvP, as that does tend to be quite a different world, and there are very specific tames that you'll be using for most of the time. At least that's my understanding overall. The Megalodon doesn't really come to too much play in that, but underwater creatures don't really anyway. And with this creature dealing the bleed ability, that is something which I really do hold home for PvE players, as it really does make a huge difference. It does for PvP as well, but again, it's not really relevant in that scene, at least as far as I'm concerned. The bleed ability just allows a new dimension of damage to be dealt with this creature, and on top of it, it is pretty mobile, and it just makes it a nice, relatively small creature for defeating the Moda on Gen 1, especially considering you've got the X variants of these creatures and just general little fighting machines. In at number 7, we have got the Beelzebufo, and come on, this creature is definitely deserving of a spot on the list. It is small, relatively compact, and it is a dream in underwater scenarios. The speed that you can get out of this thing is absurd, and also the fact that it doesn't necessarily spawn in the water off the get-go means that it could potentially be easier for you to tame. The only real downside with that in this argument is that they do spawn in the swamp, but as long as you can find one that's, you know, more on the outskirts and still a reasonably high level, you're going to have a good time. Even lower level ones are still going to have that same speed. They're just going to sacrifice a lot on weight and health and some other important things that you might need in the ocean biome, because there are some pretty deadly creatures out there, and you know, it's a pretty harsh environment, so I would definitely be careful if you're on a lower level mount. They also are just insane cementing paste gatherers. It's not really going to make a huge difference for underwater travel, although you can just farm trilobites with these things, and that is my all-time favorite way to get cementing paste with these creatures. It's just the go-to for me, and I really love it for its speed, its overall general agility, and just being a relatively easy tame to get. Just an all-round great tame. Now, we all know the Maywing is great when it comes to general mobility. It pretty much tops every list that you could possibly put it on in that genre. Well, it really does do a great job as an underwater tame, and most people don't expect it. First, it can glide across the top of the surface of the water, and I find that to be quite an effective, useful ability, escaping danger that may be in the depths. And I know usually they don't come up all the way, but if you've got some jellyfish or some electric eels, yes, they can still shock you while you're on the surface, but you can get away much quicker. They also are just really fast swimmers as well. You probably wouldn't expect it out of these creatures, but trust me, they can definitely go for it, and you'll not be let down by the speed and agility and just general mobility that you get out of these things in any environment, that being underwater or not, which is why I'm putting them so highly on the list as well, because they're not only the best underwater tame really that could fit in this spot on the list. Obviously not the best underwater tame out there, because there's still 5 more creatures to go, but they're just so great in their ability to be great in the water and then great on the land as well. There's just a lot of versatility with these creatures, and hence why they're so high on the list, because you might say the Meg or the Beels is just a better underwater mount, but with the versatility, this is doing much better. In at number 5, we've got the Raasclark, and I feel like a lot of people forget that this is sort of an underwater creature. I know you probably wouldn't use it for that. It is an insanely great mount for general PvP use. It can wreck bases, and although its health can be pretty temperamental in some scenarios, it has been proven to be highly successful in that environment. Also, just from a PvE perspective, they are great for picking up a wealth of creatures of huge sizes like Rexes and Paraceratheriums. They also have a lot of speed and a lot of weight, so it makes them really amazing for metal gathering. It's just such a nice thing to have. Yes, we all know and love the RG, but the Raasclark in a lot of cases is just generally the nicer creature to use, and it is an insanely great fast swimmer. If you've ever taken this thing into the water, then you'll know you can still get a lot of speed and agility with this thing, and you still have all those abilities and heavy damage dealing that the Raasclark obviously has. I'm not sure if it has oxygen or not. I think it would, considering what it is. Well, it does have an oxygen stat obviously, so you probably have to be a little bit careful with that. I haven't been in the underwater environment for too long with this thing. I've just merely gone to skim down to some caves and things, so I haven't really paid attention to it. But again, that's something which you're probably going to want to pay attention to, and their tame method is something which you could consider quite exciting as well, which adds to the creature being so good. I don't know what it is, but with me, if they have an exciting tame method and the creature has an exciting tame method, then it really makes them even more fun to use once they've tamed, especially if it's like a lengthy process. It's not too difficult really for the running Ganatha. It's way easier to turn like the Reaper, although it kind of follows the same tame method because it impregnates a dino of your choice. Choose a Bronto really. I think it's the best one out there. I think for effectiveness reasons, something like that. It's way easier when it's not you and it's a creature, and then you have to get all those resources instead of the XP which you get from the Reaper, which I don't think is as good of a system, but you know, still, honestly, it's not the hardest tame in the world, especially if you prepare, and it's still a pretty cool one, and I think it just adds to the general ambience of this creature on top of everything it already does. So continuing on, we've got the Spinosaurus, and it is no doubt that the Spino is a really great underwater creature. I'm going to give the Barry a brief mention here, as I haven't actually put the Baryonyx on the list, but I would put it around this spot as well. I just think the Spino is the superior underwater creature just generally. This thing has more speed than the Barry, and obviously it has the added damage, and it's still really agile too. And considering the underwater cave entrances and underwater caves are so massive on the island anyway, you're not going to struggle to get a Spino down, and in there it is ridiculously easy, and you're a heavy damage dealer. You just need to be careful of obviously all the jellyfish and the electric eels and the oxygen which comes with the Spino as well. They're your only real downsides, but just considering how mobile this creature is and versatile again, like the Maywing, it's a better underwater creature than the Maywing, by the way, because of just all the added damage and defense, which is something the Maywing lacks in. It is just such a versatile general travel mount as well. It's great on the land, it's great for boss fights, it's just great for going around the map, obviously being a nice travel mount, and it can deal hefty amounts of damage, especially considering it can stand up on its hind legs ever since the TLC, which is just a nice neat ability for it to have. And on top of that, which I haven't even mentioned yet, which I probably should have earlier, they have the hydration buff too, so when they're in the water they deal even more damage and just have even better buff applied to them when they're in the environment, so it's going to make them even more powerful and even more formidable to all other things that will be in the ocean trying to get into your way. But really, do be careful of the electric eels and jellyfish. You might underestimate them, but if you get yourself caught in a stun lock, it's not going to be a good time for you or your Spino. But apart from that, really, gold star creature deserves to be here. In at number 3, we've got the Basilosaurus. Come on, it does need to be here. Its immunity to electric eels and jellyfish is really something insane. Should I give an honorable mention to the Basilosaurus as well, as I've heard that has the same ability. I haven't tested it enough to warrant it being on the list, but actually I do want you to comment down below, if you use the Basilosaurus in an underwater environment, how does that actually act? Because I want to know, and actually I will test it out throughout the week, because I'm playing around with some of the new creatures more. But yeah, comment that down below, as that's something which I definitely like to know. The Basilo is really an ideal caving creature though, although yes, it does have that depth limit which you need to be careful of. The immunity to electric eels and jellyfish, and also just general speed, make it ideal for the job. Also, I'm pretty confident it doesn't have an oxygen stat as well. They can jump to and make little rainbows if that's your thing as well. They can also make oil on top of this, so if you want some slow oil farms, it's really not the fastest thing in the world, then you can have the Bass on your side, and obviously the X-Basilar is on Gen 1 if you want an even better version. Next up, we've got the Shadowmane, and I have to put this creature here because in my opinion it is really one of those good ones. It has the hydration buff from a start like the Spino, but it is much smaller and in my opinion much more agile, and it still does all of that heavy dealing damage. On top of this as well, it does have a pack buff, so if you're going down with some friends or you just bring some more along with you, then you can have an even bigger advantage in underwater environments. I'm pretty sure they do have an oxygen buff though, so be careful with that. They have natural armor and require no saddle, so that's an even bigger benefit. Less resources to get these things, and also just, come on, these creatures really do pack a punch. I've probably said it earlier because it just needs to be mentioned really. Come on, they deal so much damage, they're so fast and agile in the water, packed with abilities, they have that hydration buff. So they're going to be great for underwater caving, great for underwater bosses, and great for anything that you might want to do in an underwater environment in Ark. And that is why they deserve to be in the number 2 spot in my opinion. So let's get on to the creature that actually tops the list today. In number 1, I have put the Bloodstalker. It was there the last time I think I did one of these videos, but I've obviously updated the list a bit more now, and I'll continue to update my list as obviously the channel goes forward. But this is still topping the list of the best underwater mounts out there. It is just so agile on land and in water. It really does add to the versatility of this creature. You can also see all the aggros of the Tames around you, so you can see what creature to aggro to easily evade danger before it even comes near to you. And they are zippingly fast in an underwater environment. Although maybe they don't have the damage capacity to defeat bosses, they still have the damage available to easily kill quite a lot of creatures around them. You'd be surprised how much damage a Bloodstalker can actually deal if you really put them to work in a scenario like this. If you get a good Bloodstalker, you're going to be having a good time with that. Good mobility, good damage, and great versatility, as you don't need to simply cry out your creature or something like that when you hop out of the water. You can just keep traveling around the map with these things, and obviously they're just useful for general travel and just around the map. They are nice companions to have too. They really are very, very versatile Tames. Just as a versatility list, they would definitely be up there. The only thing obviously they lack is you're not going to be killing any moders with these things, and they don't have any upgraded variants like some of the creatures that I've mentioned on the list, but they're already so good and just so overpowered in my opinion that I think they deserve the number 1 spot. But comment down below your thoughts if you feel like maybe there should be another creature in at the number 1 spot, and actually what is your favourite underwater mount out there. But anyway, that is the end of today's video, and I really hope that you've enjoyed this video. As always, comment down below if you didn't agree with this list, as I would like to know your thoughts, and if you didn't agree with this list, put your 10 actually in the comments below. I'll see you all later.